Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nurin Imtiaz binti Syamuddin, matrix number 8221857. So today, me and my team members will be discussing about the case of KHAIRY JAMALUDDIN Abu Bakar and Muhammad RASYIQ Muhammad ALWI 2025 MLJU 2099, which is a significant defamation case involving social media. This case arose during the COVID-19 pandemic. The plaintiff, KHAIRY JAMALUDDIN, was the Minister of Health and played such a major role in managing Malaysia's vaccination program. The defendant, Muhammad RASYIQ Muhammad ALWI, also known as Ustad Abu Shafiq, was a religious preacher who frequently shared his view on social media platforms such as Instagram and also Facebook. So between October 2021 and January 2022, the defendant published several posts accusing KHAIRY of misleading the public about COVID-19 vaccination requirements, like about receiving a booster dose and even falsifying vaccination records. He also claimed that KHAIRY had failed in managing the national vaccination program and should be resigned. However, KHAIRY denied these allegations and provided official Ministry of Health records proving that he had received his vaccinations and booster dose. The defendant failed to attend the trial and did not produce any evidence to support his claim. The main legal issues was whether the statement amounted to actionable defamation. The court examined three elements. First, whether the statements were defamatory. The court found that the allegation portrayed KHAIRY as dishonest, which could seriously damage his reputation. Second, whether the statement referred to the plaintiff. This requirement was clearly satisfied because the defendant directly identified KHAIRY through his name, initial, hashtags, photograph, and also social media tags. Third, whether the statement were published to a third parties. Since the post was shared with 1,000 of followers on social media, the publication element was established. The defendant attempted to rely on the defense of justification, fair comments, and qualified privilege. However, the court rejected all the defense because he failed to prove the truth of his allegations and his statements were based on misleading interpretation. As a result, the High Court ruled in favor of KHAIRY JAMALUDDIN and held that the statements were false, defamatory, and made with malice.
I will now explain the elements of defamation. So, under the Malaysian law, a plaintiff must prove three elements to establish defamation. So, first, a defamatory statement. Second, a reference to the plaintiff. And third, a publication to the third party. So, firstly, the court will examine whether the statements were defamatory or not. The defendant here accused KHAIRY, which is the plaintiff, of lying about receiving his COVID-19 vaccinations, falsifying his vaccination records, and misleading the public. The court held that these allegations attacked KHAIRY's honesty and integrity as a health minister and were capable of lowering his reputation in the eyes of the reasonable members of the society, and therefore, the first element of defamation was satisfied. The second element is reference to the plaintiff. So in this case, the court found that the defendant's publications clearly referred to the plaintiff, which is KHAIRY, because the defendant used his name, photographs, social media accounts, and even hashtags. The third element is publication. The statements were posted on Facebook and Instagram, reaching more than 39,000 followers in total and were widely shared online. Since all three elements were proven, the court concluded that KHAIRY has successfully established a prima facie case of defamation before considering the defendant's defenses.
Representing the defendant's defenses. The defendant relied on three recognized defenses in defamation law, namely justification, fair comment, and qualified privilege. He argued that his statements were based on information available online and that he was acting in the public interest. However, the High Court rejected all three defenses. The defense of justification failed because the defendant could not prove that his allegations were true. Fair comment failed because the comments were not based on accurate facts but on misleading interpretations. Qualified privilege also failed because the defendant had no legitimate duty to publish unverified allegations, and the court also found that his actions were motivated by malice. This decision is consistent with previous Malaysian authorities. The court reaffirmed that defendants must prove the truth of their allegations, that hard proofs may be defamatory, and that malice defeats certain defenses. Most importantly, the case shows that social media users are subject to the same defamation principles as traditional publishers. In conclusion, the High Court rejected all three defenses because the defendant failed to provide evidence, relied on misleading information, and acted with malice. The case reinforces that while freedom of speech is important, it does not protect allegations that damage another individual's reputation.
Next, I will be explaining about the court decision in the case of KHAIRY Jamaluddin Abu Bakar versus Muhammad RASYIQ bin Muhammad ALWI. The High Court ruled in the favour of plaintiff KHAIRY Jamaluddin after finding that the defendant had published a series of defamatory statements through his Instagram and Facebook accounts. These statements accused the plaintiff of lying about his COVID-19 vaccination status and misleading the public regarding the government's vaccinations program. The court applied the three essential elements of defamation under Malaysian law. Firstly, the statements were defamatory because they portrayed the plaintiff as dishonest and untrustworthy. Secondly, the statements clearly referred to the plaintiff as the defendant used his name, the initial KJ, and even tagged his official social media account. Thirdly, the statements were published to the third parties through social media platform with thousands of followers. Another important issue was that the defendant failed to attend the trial despite being given several opportunities over the period of more than 3 years. However, the court emphasized that the plaintiff still had the burden of proving his case. To support his claim, the plaintiff called two witnesses, namely KHAIRY Jamaluddin himself as PW1 and Tan Sri Dr. Noor Hisham Abdullah as PW2. The court also relied on official vaccination records and social media publications. After assessing all the evidence, the judge concluded that the allegations were false, malicious, and unsupported by credible evidence. After finding the defendant liable for defamation, the High Court proceeded to assess the appropriate damages. The court awarded a total of Rm 2.5 million, consisting of Rm 2 million in general damages, Rm 250,000 in aggravated damages, and Rm 250,000 in exemplary damages. General damages were awarded because the defamatory statements caused serious harm to the plaintiff's personal and professional reputation. As a former Minister of Health and the coordinator of Malaysia COVID-19 immunization program, the plaintiff held an important public position, and the allegation had the potential to undermine public confidence in the national vaccination program. The court also granted aggravated damages because the defendant showed no remorse and failed to offer any apology or retraction. In addition, one of the defamatory publications even involved a photograph of the plaintiff's child, which further aggravated the harm suffered. Exemplary damages were awarded to punish the defendant and to deter others from spreading false and defamatory information, especially on social media. In my opinion, the award of Rm 2.5 million was appropriate because the plaintiff was a prominent public figure. The allegation involved matters of national public health, and the publications reached a very wide audience. Therefore, the amount awarded was necessary not only to compensate the plaintiff but also to discourage similar irresponsible conduct in the future.
Moving on to the first recommendation, which is strengthening the regulations of online defamation. Nowadays, social media allows information to spread very quickly. A single post can reach thousands of people within minutes and can continue spreading through shares, reposts, and screenshots. This can be seen in the case of KHAIRY Jamaluddin against Muhammad RASYIQ, where allegations made online had the potential to cause serious damage to a person's reputation. Therefore, there is a need for a clear regulations on how defamatory content is handled online. This includes clearer guidelines on social media publications, reposting content, and the responsibilities of the online users and platform. By strengthening these regulations, online users can be held more accountable for the information they share, while also providing better protection for individuals against online defamation. Moving on to the second recommendation, which is enhancing public awareness of defamation laws. Many social media users are unaware that comments, reposts, and allegations shared online may result in legal liability. From KHAIRY Jamaluddin case, it actually demonstrates on how statements made on social media can have serious consequences and cause substantial reputational harm. Therefore, public legal education campaigns and awareness programs should be introduced to help individuals understand their rights and responsibilities when communicating online. Greater awareness can encourage responsibility information sharing and reduce the spread of defamatory statements in the digital environment. Moving on to the third recommendation, which is balancing freedom of expression and protection of reputation. Freedom of speech is an important constitutional right that allows individuals to discuss matters of public interest and express their opinions freely. However, this freedom should be exercised responsibly and should not be used to justify false allegations against others. From KHAIRY Jamaluddin case, it actually illustrates this balance. Although the issues discussed involve public interest, allegations of wrongdoing should still be supported by credible evidence before being published. Therefore, courts should continue distinguishing between genuine criticism and defamatory accusations to ensure that both freedom of expressions and individual reputations are adequately protected. Moving on to the final recommendation, which is the reform of Malaysian defamation law. Although the Defamation Act 1957 continues to provide an important legal framework for protecting reputation, it was enacted long before the emergence of social media and modern digital communication. Today, information can be shared instantly through online platforms and may continue circulating through reposts, shares, screenshots, and viral content. As demonstrated in the disputes between KHAIRY Jamaluddin cases, defamatory statements published online can spread rapidly and cause significant reputational harm within a very short period of time. Therefore, lawmakers should consider updating the defamation Defamation Act 1957 to address issues that are unique to the digital environment. These may include clearer provision relating to the social media publications, viral content, online intermediary responsibilities, and more effective remedies for online reputational harm. By modernizing the law, Malaysia will be better equipped to address contemporary forms of defamation while ensuring that legal protections remain relevant in the digital age. To conclude, the case of KHAIRY Jamaluddin Abu Bakar against Muhammad RASYIQ and Muhammad ALWI, it highlights the continuing importance of defamation law in protecting individual reputations in the digital age. The court found that the defendant's statements were defamatory and rejected the defense rights, reaffirming that the freedom of expression does not extend to the publication of false and unverified allegations. The case also demonstrates the significant impact of social media, where information can spread rapidly and cause substantial reputational harm within a short period of time. Therefore, lawmakers should consider updating the Defamation Act 1957 to address issues that are unique to the digital environment. These may include clearer provision relating to the social media publications, viral content, online intermediary responsibilities, and more effective remedies for online reputational harm. By modernizing the law, Malaysia will be better equipped to address contemporary forms of defamation while ensuring that legal protections remain relevant in the digital age.